You're watching the OBR streaming network. This is the React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. Good to see you all here tonight with us, filing in for our show. We've got a holding pattern of sorts with the veteran quarterback market we're going to discuss tonight and take a look at any new stuff with the draft, as there's a lot of smoke, a lot of nonsense out there. This is kind of not much going on as far as with the Browns, and we're waiting to see what will happen next. So we're going to discuss all of that. I do want to, if you've been over at the OBR.com, watching and following the insiders and everything that they are putting out, you will have known everything and all the news that has broken the past few days ahead of time. And with that, I want to play this video on the OBR.com.
Information comes at you fast from so many angles every single day. You have interests, diversions, a number of distractions. Times have changed. You don't have time for all that pop and flash of Browns trolls, bots, and aggregators. That's why you head to the OBR. Here, it's all Browns, all day, every day. Established in 1999, the OBR is stacked with first-rate reporters who are at practice, in the locker room, talking to sources, breaking down tape, crunching the numbers, at the combine, talking free agency and the draft, all fueled by the most lively forums and Browns fan base anywhere. Yes, the world's gonna throw a lot at you today. Just remember to keep your head in the game. The OBR. Stuff your helmet with better stuff.
That's right. Stuff your helmet with better stuff at the OBR. The link is in the description below. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way in or out. What's going on, Pete?
Not much as far as, well, I shouldn't say there's nothing going on because, listen, the Browns need to start signing guys because people are losing their goddamn minds.
Yes.
So today,
factual,
we got a clean sweep of Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper, Ben Albright, Dane Brugler's every mock draft. They've all had Abdul Carter number 2 overall. And yet, there are people who insist that the Browns basically had a meeting where, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Jimmy Haslam were all there. And they've said that Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam, say to Jimmy Haslam, look, we've made our decision. We're gonna draft Shedeur Sanders. Jimmy Haslam's reaction is immediately gets on the phone, immediately goes, "Get me Journey, get him here. We're gonna have a live concert to celebrate this moment. This is how it's gonna be. Journey. I don't care that Steve Perry's 76 years old. You're gonna get him here too. This is how big this is. Like, this is the level of insanity." Or the whole Myles Garrett thing. It's, talking about how he knows who the quarterback is and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's marketing. You are being sold something, which is fine. I mean, it's working because it's got all these people. It's got national onlookers who cover the draft, look at this and have to consider this idea that based on an Andrew Siciliano team-produced podcast that the Browns have not only made the decision already, which frankly, I think they have, but that they're picking a quarterback and that Myles Garrett knows which quarterback it's going to be, even though the Browns can't possibly promise them that, because, the Titans could go and, make an insane choice. They could trade with the Giants or something along those lines, or they could just decide, hey, we don't want Cam Ward, we want Shedeur Sanders. And at that point, if they've told Myles Garrett, well, we were going to get you Shedeur Sanders, they can't. And when you start going, well, they could have said they're going to get him one of these quarterbacks, like it immediately starts falling apart. This idea that he knows exactly who the quarterback is. Like, you're smarter than this. You can think about this and realize that of course they're not going to promise anything that they can't deliver. So this is, people are losing their minds, and some of this is, nothing against Shedeur Sanders. I personally, I've said all along, I think he's a second-round quarterback, and I've been on. I had an article out ready to go on Abdul Carter on New Year's Eve when the Browns season was over. That I thought he was going to be the guy, and here we are. And when you listen to people who don't pay attention to Browns marketing stuff and talk to the league and people within the league, they're all coming to the same conclusion: Abdul Carter. Now, could the Browns, change up and go with Travis Hunter? They could. I wrote an article on that today. Why I don't think they will, but. Even like some of the people like Mel Kiper is one, I was corrected today. I thought he was the biggest Shedeur Sanders fan. John Costco of PFF claims the title. Even he's like, I think Shedeur Sanders is the best quarterback in this draft, but I understand why people are hesitant because of all the, not having the elite arm, not having the build and all these other things. And even when he did a spot with ESPN or whatever today, he cited Cleveland's weather, the AFC North weather, because these are real things that they're going to have to take into consideration, and came to the conclusion that Abdul Carter is the best player for them to combat Lamar Jackson, to combat Joe Burrow, and whatever the hell the Steelers are going to roll out this year. It makes all the sense in the world. And then, if you pay attention to the people who talk to people within the league, they're looking at this and saying that, look, Shedeur Sanders could go 2 or 3, but if he doesn't, there's a real chance he's going to be sitting there potentially in the 20s. And if that is the theory, and you're the Browns or the Giants, you're probably sitting there going, why the hell am I going to take this guy at 2 or 3 when I could potentially be able to go get him late in the first round? Now, if you are the Browns, hired employees, and you've been hyping up the idea of getting, a quarterback at 2, and then they come around and go get him in 24, for example, well, then this sounds like the greatest deal in history. And you will be able to celebrate this as the achievement that you've built it up to be. And I don't mean that to sound like anything that people like Nathan Zagoro or Bo Bishop is saying is disingenuous. I think they believe what they believe, but it does just sort of work out for them that if the Browns take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and then they were able to go get a quarterback, trade up from 33 and go get a Shedeur Sanders or a Jackson Dart, that they're going to be able to go, Andrew Berry, he saw the value on the board. He was able to get the best player in the draft and then come back and get his quarterback. And rightfully so, I think at that point that people would be genuinely excited. It would be really similar to when the Browns took Joe Thomas and then came back and got Brady Quinn. Now, it didn't work out with Brady Quinn, but it's difficult to argue with the process they took. They got a Hall of Fame player, and then they came back and got the quarterback. To me, that's where we're headed. And we're still a month out, but I think that's a far more likely scenario than the Browns are going to just take a quarterback who, if you go by the consensus board, is rated 23.6 on that board. I don't think they're going to take that player too. And for subscribers, we talked about more into why, but it doesn't wash at any level. Comparing him to Bo Nix doesn't help your case. Bo Nix went 12th. You didn't go second. Second is a big deal. You have expectations for that pick. Whereas, and if you take up Travis Hunter or you take up Abdul Carter, the expectations for them are sky high. You expect these guys to be, flirting with top 5 at their position in the league, which is how it should be viewed. The same way you viewed Myles Garrett, and he's there. Yeah. He's number 1. If you can get another one of those, you're building more like the Eagles built. And, a lot of people seem to be forgetting the lessons of the Philadelphia Eagles, which is get a team loaded with really good players. Obviously, quarterback is hugely important, and the Browns have to figure it out. But, man, you watch that team, the defensive line that they had, the receivers that they had, the offensive line that they had. And then, Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. But the talent on that team was so overwhelming in the Super Bowl, full of first-round picks, top 10 picks on the defensive line. And it from a guy who thinks very highly of Howie Roseman and Andrew Berry, I don't think he's going to just say, screw it, we're just going to take a quarterback at 2. But we'll see. I mean, Howie Roseman's also the guy who traded up for Carson Wentz.
I think I think you're right, and I think that the market right now is making things crazy because of the standstill we're in. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit here, and we're going to start with that, and then we're going to get into kind of the draft and where everything's at right now, because there's a lot of people pointing to different things, and we'll talk about that, and we'll look at a couple different things that people have had to say this week, and we'll react to it. But as the name of the show, but to your point. I don't think that they're prepared to take Shedeur at 2. I do think that's an incredible reach. We've been talking about this. I would be surprised. The only thing I would push back on what you said is that I don't think that Shedeur is going to be there in the 20s. I think he'll be off the board. I just think teams need quarterbacks, and somebody will take him before the mid-20s, maybe the early 20s, but like
the two teams that obviously stand out of the Browns are the New York Giants and then the Las Vegas Raiders. It's just a question of, do you believe that they're content with Geno Smith? Personally, I don't think Pete Carroll's waiting around on a rookie quarterback, and there's a lot of smoke around the idea that they're going to take Ashton Genty at 6. I think that's reasonable.
There's other teams, though, that have veteran quarterbacks that are on the end of their career that could be looking for the next guy. I mean, the Steelers need a quarterback. They could take a quarterback.
21.
Yeah.
They're 21. That's sort of to me, that's sort of the next team.
Yeah. And then, I don't know where the Saints pick, but they don't have a quarter.
8th or 9th.
So that's probably, but it just takes one team to fall in love. But yeah, and some teams have dart over him like you do. And I don't know how much of we'll get through, but Chris Sims' quarterback rankings this week were pretty good. Interesting stuff. He is super, super high on Ward, like super high on Ward. Like he talked about him higher than probably I've heard anybody talk about him. It gets you excited when you listen to him talk about him, because he's been right a lot in these situations, right? And in the past, and it makes you kind of want the Browns to just go up and get Ward while they're there. What do you think that would cost, Pete?
My best guess. At least 2 third-round picks, if not more than that, because the problem you run into, and what people don't seem to understand, they seem to look at this and go, well, it's just 1 pick, so they should be able to give like a 4th-round pick, and that should be all that it does. You have to convince a team that needs a quarterback not to take a quarterback, and you have another team that has already tried, reportedly, to trade up in the New York Giants. Yeah, and I assume the Browns. I have no doubt Andrew Berry has already sort of bridged this conversation to find out but the sense is that the Giants really made a push to try to make this trade. So you are competing against a team that needs a quarterback and could just sit there and pick him, and another team that is willing to give up a boatload. So even though it's just 1 pick, you would have to give up more than the Giants would, because what do the Titans care if they're down to 3rd pick? Realistically, you're either going to basically settle for Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and you probably are pretty close on the ranking there. And if you get more draft assets overall, that might be enough of a tiebreaker. Unless, of course, they love Shedeur Sanders enough to just say, we're just going to take him after trading down, in which case they're even more incentive for them to get more assets as opposed to worry about draft position. So that's a really difficult thing to navigate. So it's going to cost a lot. So you're sitting there. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the glorious 30 seconds of the 2004 draft when the Browns had 6th and 7th pick. And then you found out they only had 6 pick, and they gave up a second round pick to move up one freaking spot for Kellen Winslow, when you could have just taken the very, very good Roy Williams at wide receiver there. But it is what it is. So it's a market force thing. Like this is not a situation where you are sitting there going, well, it just costs this much. It does not. You are outbidding other teams who desperately need this thing.
Yeah, the chart goes out the window in this situation, right? And so here's an interesting question that Trill Hill asks, because you were talking about the mocks that had the Browns taking Carter, right? There's several today, right? A bunch of them.
Kuiper, Daniel Jeremiah. These are people, and Ben Albright. These are all people I know who talk to guys in the league. Danny Brugler talks to guys in the league. He didn't release a mock today, but every mock he's had has literally had Abdul Carter. I mean, the only ones that like I've seen that don't are like PFF, or I should say like the Check the Mic guys, and they're not talking to anybody. They're just reasoning it out based on what they think.
So Trill Hill in our chat says, what kills me is these mocks have the Browns passing on Sanders at 2, saying it's a weak quarterback class, but they have him going the very next pick to the Giants.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. One, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't. If you're asking me how the mock draft's going to go, it's going to go Cam Ward to the Titans, Abdul Carter to the Browns, Travis Hunter to the New York Giants. That's where I think this is going to end up. If you want me to keep going, Patriots take either Armand Membu, most likely just Armand Membu. 5, Mason Graham goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 6, Ashton Genty goes to the Raiders. And then you're working from there. So, maybe your theory on the Saints is interesting. But after that, like, I don't think the Colts are doing it anymore with the contract they just gave. Granted, it's a 1-year deal, but they gave Daniel Jones about $20 million.
Yeah.
The Jets gave $20 million. The Jets theoretically could, but they have Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor.
They gave 30 guaranteed to him. Yeah.
So seems unlikely. And beyond that, Shedeur Sanders, if they want to lean into sort of an athletic style of quarterback, Shedeur Sanders is the opposite. It would seemingly be more likely Dart than Sanders, who's far more athletic. But at that point, then you're like, the Steelers are the next team up. And the team that could be interesting to trade with is Denver at 20, because they may be in a situation where they want to add more picks, and everybody's connecting them to the running back because they just signed Evan Ingram. And the theory of the case there is there are people who don't believe that either Tyler Warren or Colton Loveland is going to make it that far. And in which case, the Denver Broncos might decide to bail out, knowing they're still going to be able to get a very, very good running back at the top of the second round. But they may just sit there and take Amari and Hampton. Then it's the Steelers. If the Steelers don't do it, then at that point it becomes, where do the Browns trade up to me? And the team I have picked out, and I've talked about this on the forums, but I give all the credit in the world to Underdog. Their mock draft they did. They nailed the 24th pick to me, which is the ideal spot. 24, the Minnesota Vikings, they are lower on draft assets because they of the moves they've made. They stand out as a team that would love to move back, get like an extra 3rd round pick, maybe some sweetener, one of those 6ths, which is what Underdog did. The Browns move up, and in their mock draft, they pick Jackson Dart. But I don't rule out the possibility that could be Shedeur Sanders either. It just really comes down to which one the Browns prefer in that scenario. Now, is it possible that Shedeur goes far earlier than that? Sure. Could Jackson Dart be gone by then? Yes. At that point, then the Browns are looking at that next wave. But none of these scenarios scare me. I'm not sitting and going, oh my God, the Browns are going to be, the Browns are screwed at that point. I agree with the sentiment that the drop off, and Chris Sims sort of alluded to this. The gap between Cam Ward and everybody else is bigger than the difference between if Shedeur Sanders is your second guy, then to whether it's Jalen Milroe, whether it's Will Howard, whether it's whoever it is you like, that the gap is much smaller between those two spots. In other words, maybe, you may not like settling for what might be your fifth quarterback on your board, but your fifth quarterback might not be nearly the distance down your board as compared to the difference between Cam Ward and number 2.
2 to 5 compared to 1 to 2. The difference is much more between 1 and 2. Absolutely. All right. So good transition from Minnesota there, because this Rodgers situation kind of has everything in a standstill as far as the veteran quarterback market, Pete. We know Russ came to visit. He visited the Giants. We know that Cousins didn't move, which is going to be what our first video is about, the Cousins situation in Atlanta. I want to talk about what these guys are talking about a little bit here, because some of the stuff that Florio is talking about here took me a little bit by surprise, but it made one really good point here. But this is the first video of the night, courtesy of Pro Football Talk. And here we go. We're going to jump into this here.
Saturday, the Atlanta Falcons did not do something, and by not doing something, they have clarified for the world their position regarding quarterback Kirk Cousins. Now, it was December when Cousins was benched for Michael Penix Jr., and I vividly recall sitting in the NBC viewing room and seeing a report from ESPN that many executives throughout the league believed the Falcons would release Kirk Cousins before a $10 million roster bonus due in 2026 became fully guaranteed in March of 2025. It was pure speculation, and the league executives were wrong. The Falcons have not released Kirk Cousins, and I wrote something at PFT within the past week or so in advance of this deadline. It's $10 million that's fully guaranteed with offset language for next year. And there'd been some misconceptions that the $10 million gets paid now. No, the $10 million gets paid next year. And if they cut him before that bonus comes due, they still owe him the $10 million. But if he goes somewhere else and makes $10 million or more, which he will, they don't owe him anything. So,
all right. So this is a really good point that nobody has really brought up yet, and it's true. The $10 million is 2020. It gets paid in 2026. So if he's off the roster and goes someplace else and gets a contract more than $10 million, which he will in 2026, they are never going to have to pay him that $10 million that they just agreed to because of the offset money, which is an interesting angle that I didn't think about when we looked at this as a deadline, right? Now, he goes on here to make some points that I disagree with, but thoughts on that, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. It makes sense for the Falcons to hold on to him, I guess, except that it also creates this weird dynamic where he's still there. When you have what will be Michael Penix in his, entering his second year, and the draft, this idea that they could hold on to the draft and stuff is fine, unless he's not planning to show up to OTAs or Michael Penix is planning on not showing up to OTAs. They're both going to be there. And at that point, now you're sitting there watching them practice, and the media eventually is going to see them. And if Kirk Cousins looks better than Michael Penix, now it's a story. And now we're going to have this thing where we're talking about Kirk Cousins v. Michael Penix again. And maybe the Falcons are comfortable with that. I mean, I feel like this entire thing is driven by ownership, and understandably so. I think Arthur Blank basically said flat out, I'm not paying him all that money to be cut. Figure it out. And we'll see if they're able to make a trade. I don't see it happening. I don't think there's enough interest. I understand why people think, the Browns will eventually get desperate enough to do it. I don't think they will. I think Kirk Cousins is certainly very interesting, and I've advocated for the position, but he's part of the reason he's so compelling is because he was going to make $1.255 million, and it was going to be such a huge cost saver that allowed you to spend elsewhere and, bolster your roster. Well, that time has passed. Unless the Browns are going to make, and they still could, certainly, a trade or, some unexpected guy gets released in the post June 1 cuts that really don't happen anymore because they instituted the ability to sort of designate guys as post June 1 cuts. So you don't really get that second great wave of options. That there's not a huge financial benefit for the Browns to sort of be like, okay, we're going to, we're going to go ahead and pay, trade for Kirk Cousins to $27.5 million. And Kirk Cousins still has a no trade clause. So if Kirk Cousins doesn't want to come to Cleveland,
yeah, but he's going to go where he can play.
I would think so, but he still has the ability to say, I don't want to do this.
And I don't think that Atlanta personally, I don't think Atlanta expects anybody to eat that entire contract. I think it would be partial. They would be like splitting it up in some way or fortune. I think the whole reason they did this is to try to get an asset trade-wise out of him. I don't even know if he'll be on the roster come week 1, no matter what. But I'm just saying, I think the whole reason that they did this, to Florio's point about the money, is they won't have to pay that money. And B, now they can hold on to him. And if somebody does get desperate enough, they can get a pick or something.
I don't think the pick matters. I mean, that would be part of it as a processing fee of sorts. But ultimately, they don't want to pay him. And they're willing to sort of wait out to get, in the same way that the Browns with the Baker Mayfield situation, yeah, they got a pick, but it really wasn't about the pick. They wanted somebody they had, in that scenario, the Browns had to eat a sizable amount of money to get rid of him. The Falcons are doing the opposite, where they're hoping somebody will take him off their hands. So I don't, they could theoretically sort of look at it the way you're doing it and saying, screw it, we'll pay the money. We'll do what the Browns did with Brock Osweiler of sorts.
Yeah.
And basically say, screw it. We're going to take this huge financial loss for the sake of draft capital.
Well, they're taking it right now anyways.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. But I don't think there's enough interest to get it there, to get anything worthwhile. And two, I do think Arthur Blank is more interested in just getting rid of the money than he is the contract. But it may be sort of half a dozen of one and 6 of the other type thing.
All right. So I want to hear what you think about what Florio says about the money, because I didn't think about this either. His thought process on this is different than mine was the entire time. So I want to hear, we'll kind of hash this out here.
To me, Chris, this deadline, once you sit down and think about it, it's meaningless. The Falcons had no reason to cut him before that. They had no reason to trade him before that if he will waive his no-trade clause.
Right.
And now they're committed to the bit that they're fine with him being the backup. And they have the flexibility to sit and wait and see how the game of quarterback musical chairs plays out for the team still looking for starters. And maybe at the end of the day, somebody's going to come to them and say, we'd like to trade for Kirk Cousins. And yes, Cousins has a no-trade clause. But if the options are stay in Atlanta and not play, or waive your no-trade clause and go somewhere else and play, what's he going to pick?
I agreed. I would think he's going to play, as long as it's not a disaster of a situation. I would think, yes, he's going to opt to play. Also, I believe Atlanta in their steadfastness and their stubbornness here. I do. Listen, when they drafted Michael Penix, they knew what they were signing up for. I think they were totally willing to kind of just take this one on the chin for 2 years. I think if you talk to them in mid-October last year, so what? All right, we're going to have Kirk Cousins here. We got another guy on a rookie contract. All right, we can afford this. No big deal. We can make it work. I also think they look at it and go, okay, Raheem Morris, what we're starting here, if Michael Penix, gets hurt, something else, we got an incredible insurance policy. Or they're just, like you said, just sit here and be patient because we're okay. We already knew he might be here. We were kind of planning on that anyways. So we'll just be patient and hang out. Let's see if somebody gets real desperate and really needs them, which might happen here with the current landscape. We might get two teams that are completely desperate and all of a sudden call Atlanta and give them a trade package they actually want. And that team might be appealing to Kirk Cousins. So I'll be interested to see what happens. But, yeah, I don't really feel that Atlanta is going to be in some we got to get him out of here. We got to get him out of here. We'll give him away for anything. I don't think that'll be the situation at all when all's said and done here.
Well, because they've already paid him $62.5 million.
Right. Right.
And it's $27.5 million for this year. When you look at the landscape of the NFL, $27.5 million for Kirk Cousins this year.
Yeah.
You forget about the $62.5 million. You've already paid.
It's already
it's
done.
Not coming back.
Exactly.
So you get the cheap year now. And Michael Penix is in year 2 of his rookie contract. Combined, they're under $30 million. That's not a dramatic investment in the quarterback position. Hell, it wasn't that long ago that they took a $35 million dead cap charge just to get Matt Ryan off the books.
Yeah, right.
So this is no big deal for them.
Yeah, exactly.
And if Michael Penix pops an Achilles tendon week 1, they need Kirk Cousins.
Exactly.
And I hate to say that because I'm going to be accused of a jinx if it happens, but we've seen it happen. 2023, there was a rash of injuries to starting quarterbacks, including Cousins, whose Achilles popped.
Right.
So what are you going to do with a backup? And you're going to take a big cap hit if you trade him, and you've already paid him $62.5 million.
Right. And this was the plan
Pay
anyways to have him for 2
and
years.
let him be the backup.
Exactly. That's why I don't think they're going to be in any rush here. It'll have to be something substantial that changes it. Let alone there, like you said, it was planned for. They've already paid it. And it is a great insurance policy right now. It is. It's for a head coach who's on his second team that wants to make sure that things go right and you get off to a good start. Last year was good. You want this one to be better? What a better way to have, we got a rookie who's a lefty, got a rocket launcher for an arm. But if he stumbles or gets hurt, damn, we got Kirk Cousins. And their plan all along was go Kirk Cousins for 2 years. He'll play pretty good, and then Michael Penix will come in. So I don't think things change a whole lot here. And, they're not desperate in this at all to all the points and factors that you pointed to there.
Now, here's the reality. Cousins wanted to get cut so he could get another bite at the contract apple.
Right.
Because I think he believes, and his agent believes, if he was free right now, he would get more than $27.5 million. And one of the things that
Okay. That's crazy talk, right? If he was a free agent right now, he would not offset their entire $27.5 million and get a deal bigger than that from anybody on the open market. Or am I crazy?
No, it's the Russell Wilson situation. He would get $1.255 million. Maybe somebody's willing to pay, there's a way to pay a little bit more than that in a weird contractual setup, but no, he's going to get what he's going to get. I agree that this would take a while. I think it would wait till after the draft. One, because the rest of this seems like it's going to take until maybe the draft. And two, because after the draft is over, Kirk Cousins is going to be able to look at the landscape and go, okay, I know exactly who's got what. And now I can sort of pick my spot and feel better about it. I think at that point, he and his agent can have a little bit more agency in sort of figuring out how he wants it to go. But I have a difficult time believing the Falcons really want to carry him the whole year for the reasons I already laid out in terms of the weird competition angle. I don't know if Raheem Morris is equipped for that. He can't manage a clock to save his life, so I don't know how he's going to handle this. And the other problem with the Cousins situation, have you looked at the Falcons' defense? Yeah. They are paying a ton of money on a backup quarterback, and their defense is made up. Can you name a single player on their defense?
They got that one good corner from...
Right now. They are. It's like a guy I liked kind of a couple of years ago on Ruke Ororo, and they just signed Tyler Davison and David Onyemata and some of these guys. They got their front seven is arguably worse than the Browns' backup front seven. It's bad. So I don't know that an optics situation that having Kirk Cousins make all this money to not play is going to look all that great if you are the GM and head coach of this team. That's probably not going to be very good.
All right.
We'll see. I mean, to be fair, the NFC South has been pretty bad, and they were in it till the end last year. But still, they need a really good draft if they want to infuse that talent with some defense with talent. But right now, I think it's going to last until the draft. And then figure it out. And it could be during the draft if somebody's willing to give them something. They're like day 3 of the draft. The Browns give them a couple 6th round picks or something, and they do it. But like, I still think this isn't going to work out the way the Falcons hope it will, and the NFL is going to still eventually call their bluff. Now, this whole thing gets weird. I think this whole thing gets a little bit weirder if Russell Wilson ends up signing anywhere else.
Yeah.
That is sort of the thing that's hanging out there. But like, at that point, you sort of have to have a cost-benefit analysis discussion with Kirk Cousins for stuff and a lot of money, or do you make a harder push for Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, and whoever else is in that tier? And none of those is an inspiring choice, but we are living in a world of uninspiring choices. So that's sort of where, like,
yeah. And a world where their jobs are on the line this year.
Maybe.
Potentially. I know you say maybe, but I mean,
it's so hard to know.
If they go win 3 games again, nobody's surviving.
Well, 3 games, yes. I mean, I had somebody tell me today that if the Browns draft Abdul Carter, they're somehow going to only win 1 game.
Kenny Pickett is your only quarterback right now. I mean, that's not – I don't see Kenny Pickett winning a bunch of games for anybody.
I don't think Kenny Pickett would win games. But as I've said all along, I thought the Browns win 5-6 with Jameis Winston last year. I would like to think that with more defense and what I aspire to see as a functional running game, that they will be able to do a little bit more.
Sure. That's not ideal.
No way. Ideal left town a while ago. We are past ideal.
Well,
it is now.
You got to try to put the best team on the field. This is crazy. We got Kenny Pickett and.
Here you go, getting all worked up over the 3rd string quarterback.
But yeah, you say that, but he's the only guy, and then you're saying that like you're not interested enough in Kirk Cousins. The only other options are a bunch of guys that they're not good enough to win. I mean, if we go back to Flacco, Winston, that's not a recipe for success. You just said Winston wins 5-6 games
with last year's team. They aren't on last year's team. As again, I continue to look I have the same focus that I've had all offseason. Get better on the line of scrimmage, run the damn ball, play good defense. All of those things will make whoever is playing quarterback their life easier. Now, they have to prove that they can do those things, but nevertheless, I think those things are eminently achievable. A historic running back class where I think the Browns will end up drafting 2. There's plenty of offensive line talent to go draft and build behind what you've got. And like I said, if they take Abdul Carter as the second pick of the draft, their defense is already better.
100%.
So
defense has got to be better. Got to surround the quarterback and make playing that position easier. But you also have to put a credible quarterback on the field. I mean, that's insane to just ignore the most important position in the game is insane.
Well, at this point, as I have been, even though you hate it, I've been all aboard on getting Russell Wilson. So I have no problem with that. So
I'm fine.
That's where I'm at this point.
I'm fine with Russ. I've come to peace. If Russell Wilson is the best option out there, and I think he could win games for the Browns, I do. He is the best option. So I'm fine with it. I don't care how big of a douchebag he is. I don't care. If he wins games, I'm fine with it. But like the thing is, I don't know if he comes here.
That's obviously the big meatball that's hanging out there. Although I would say that there have been talk that it's a financial issue. It is not. It's entirely a what does Russ really want to do question. And that may be Russ. That might also be his wife and just the general how family works and all those things. So we shall see. But like, I would like to think that the Browns can put together a more compelling case than New York Giants can. I would like to think that. Now, they can't offer New York, and that may be, he was very interested in the Giants in New York and the Giants last year. Is
The
that
question, yeah. Is that the trumpet? Yeah. The question though is about Rodgers, right? So this weird thing hanging out there with Minnesota in them.
Yep,
That is what is holding all this up right now.
correct.
So that Minnesota has basically, Quessy and them have looked at Rodgers and said, yeah, we think he's got gas left in the tank, and they've given the decision over to O'Connell. At this point, he just has to make a decision. Does he want to go with Rodgers or does he want to go with JJ? But he has to decide, because then Rodgers is either A, going to retire, probably unlikely, or B, go to the Steelers. I can only imagine, right?
I love that idea. I want that so much.
That's fine, but
Yeah.
that puts the Browns in it. That affects everything. Like, what doesn't really matter what Russ wants if Rodgers goes where he wants to go.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's is all out there, and this is it's a weird thing. So today, did you see the kind of today? All of a sudden, there's this flow of stuff from Pittsburgh that they're optimistic all of a sudden on the Rodgers situation. I don't know where that comes from, because it seems very clear that he's just waiting on O'Connell's decision. He's made it clear he wants to go to Minnesota, and that's it. That's how I interpret the situation.
The only thing I saw was not positive, and that was Cam Hayward's quote about, you either want to be a Steeler or you don't.
Yeah, I saw all that too. Yeah.
So I that's anything else I'm unaware of, but that is the thing I saw, which is just Cam Hayward basically putting it out there on Front Street, who's also 135 years old and still all pro good. And I can imagine from his standpoint, he's got to be incredibly irritated. At this whole thing, because he is like Mr. Steeler.
He was talking about the dark retreats and everything and all this stuff. He was talking a lot of shit. So that was very good. All right.
So to your point, if all of a sudden we get breaking news, Russell Wilson's going to the Giants, this situation gets a whole lot more precarious.
Okay.
Now people are going to immediately ask, does that change what they do in the draft? No, absolutely not. You don't change your whole board or your approach because of that. But it does all of a sudden put pressure on them. Do the Browns suddenly are they content with those free agent options? Are they then going to re-explore the Kirk Cousins thing? Are they going to talk to somebody like Green Bay about Malik Willis? Are they going to talk who I view as a draft pick, if you do it, is Joe Milton. To me, I think that is basically drafting a rookie. You're just paying the trade value and losing a year of contract, but you're effectively saying we are drafting this rookie into the system. I don't think that's a realistic option because you are then at that point potentially in a world where it's Joe Milton and Kenny Pickett. But the Russell Wilson thing is a big deal. I don't love the Carson Wentz idea. I think that's
please no.
Worrying to me, given how his situation in Washington ended.
Yes,
but we shall see. So I mean, it's the same thing for a lot of people who are like, I have a difficult time getting worked up for things that have not happened yet. So we'll see. Russell Wilson, if that situation all of a sudden changes, then that becomes a whole new deal. But if Russell Wilson decides, hey, I'm coming to Cleveland, like, people are still not going to be like, oh man, all our problems are solved, but you're at least going to be able to say you have a credible quarterback.
Yeah, it's a good outcome. I mean, him coming to Cleveland, despite my dislike of him as a person at this point, is a good outcome, and I wish he would do that.
I just cannot. I cannot wait for the TikToks,
dude. If Carson Wentz, I mean, he is right up there in my most hated quarterbacks in the league. So, I mean, this offseason is just not going great so far. So, all right, let's go. Let's do one more Cousins. Here's Breer on the Cousins situation, real quickly.
And now that Myles Garrett is, by the way, the second highest,
courtesy of the Rich Eisen show,
paid non-quarterback in the NFL and state of Ohio, which we'll get to in a second. What is the Browns' plan right now at quarterback, Albert?
I think their plan is to continue to look at all the veteran options. I think Kirk Cousins is on their radar.
Okay.
Russell Wilson was in there at the end of last week. The Cousins thing is interesting because he wants out. And at first I really looked at this 2 months ago and said, they got to get Kirk Cousins out of there. It's what's best for their young quarterback. I'm starting to wonder if they maybe wind up a big winner here, because someone's going to come out of all of this, and maybe multiple teams are going to come out of this with a big question to answer at quarterback, right? Whenever Aaron Rodgers makes his decision. And if that happens, then all of a sudden, I think the Vikings probably have the best option out there for anyone, right? And so, yeah, he'd cost $27.5 million for someone next year. Could you work out an agreement with the Falcons where maybe the Falcons pay $10 million of that $27.5, and they essentially buy a draft pick back from you for Kirk Cousins? I think something like that could be in play.
Even for Minnesota, even for Minnesota, you think Cousins could wind back up in Minnesota after all?
I don't think so. But Cleveland makes sense to me.
Okay.
I look at Cleveland. Cleveland makes sense to me. Kevin Stefanski coached Kirk Cousins, and didn't just directly coached him. He was his quarterback's coach for a year and his offensive coordinator for a year. Over that 2-year span in Minnesota. So he has a good idea of what he'd be working with. I think for Stefanski, it would make a ton of sense to bring in a guy where you wouldn't have to force it if you're not in love with what's available to you at quarterback at 2. And I think at least for the guys in the team, guys like Myles Garrett, you at least have a quarterback that you can go out there and win with at that point. I think bringing back Joe Flacco for them I think it would just introduce all kinds of different things, and I wonder if that would be feasible based on the way that based on the way the last couple of years have played out. And then Russell, to me at least, I think Cousins would be a more attractive solution for them than Russell Wilson. But again, that's another one of those. Atlanta has to be willing, and if Atlanta feels like they've got you in a tough spot, they could hold a gun to your head and try to get more.
Catch the Rich Eisen.
Interesting stuff there on the entire situation. Kind of what you were saying about Atlanta, and some leverage there. But the interesting, so what about what would you say, Pete, about people that say that Russ doesn't throw to the middle of the field? He's very checked down, and his long, moon ball. He doesn't like throwing over the middle very often. And so is he a bad fit for what Stefanski does?
No. Look, he played with Darrell Bevel with the Seahawks forever. Kevin Stefanski is very familiar with Darrell Bevel. They talked about hiring him.
Yeah.
For their quarterback, he was a candidate for the offensive coordinator job.
Yeah.
Yes, there are things that Kirk Cousins, or I should say, that Russell Wilson does well. Certainly, he throws those moon balls and does some other things. You're Kevin Stefanski. He has how long has Russell been in the league? 45 years. There's no shortage of tape to look at and say this is what he does well and what he doesn't do well. And you do what Kevin Stefanski's done with everybody. You figure out what works for him. And they've done that. They were able to, you go back, obviously Deshaun Watson just puts such a black hole on everything. Because you go back to 2023 and you look at it, and the Browns won games with 4 different starting quarterbacks and offenses that did not always look the same. I think it's, if you watch that, because what was the talk coming out of that season? There were people talking about there was the Joe Flacco offense and the Deshaun Watson offense, and then you had a little dabble in whatever the hell PJ Walker was doing for 2 game-winning drives and DTR. The reason you can say there was a Deshaun Watson offense and and a Joe Flacco offense is because the coaching staff did a good job of fitting to their ability. So
Sure.
at that point,
You don't want to replicate that, though.
don't want to replicate what? I want to replicate.
You don't want to replicate having to change offenses.
No. What I'm saying is they in that season, they were able to, on almost a moment's notice, craft an offense around the particular quarterback they had.
I'm just saying, don't you think I would ideally like the guy that can run what they want to run and believe in the most, which is a guy
I think they want to win football games, and
right.
they will do whatever it takes to do that. So,
and that would give them theoretically that would give them the best chance to win football games.
Yeah, I don't look at it and say Russell Wilson forces them to abandon everything that they've done.
That was my question.
They're still going to run the ball the way they want to do. The only thing that sort of, I'd have to look, but the only thing that sort of struck me when I looked at his, like, Russell Wilson splits with the Steelers, and some of this may just be a product of the fact that the running game was just, I'll just put it kindly, ass. He was not good in terms of like play off of play action. Like their play action game was not good. All of his big time throws were like, and turnover worthy throws. He didn't have very many, which is one of the reasons I think he's appealing. Most of the bad outcomes came off of play action. That is the only thing where I sit there and go, how are you going to make this work? Now, the easiest way to do that, be really good at running the football. And then it sort of takes care of itself, because now it then, if you're able to run the ball well, you force teams not to play too high. You get them to take a guy down and play the run honestly. And then Russell Wilson has the ability to take those shots. Now, what I would say is, like, just the sort of talking about him in the offense, if the Browns can run the ball and open up the opportunity for Russell to take those kinds of shots, it's also going to open up other things in the offense that, while you sit there and go, well, maybe Russell Wilson is not great at, intermediate throws over the middle of the field or whatever, that by virtue of the spacing that is created, it's going to make it easier for him to succeed in those areas. And while it may not be all of a sudden be a strength, it is a viable option. So that's where I sit there and go, you're fine. If the Browns are interested in Russell Wilson, the Browns have already sort of looked at this and said, we can make this work in a way that's going to be productive. Because to your point, your overarching point since the season has ended, they got to win football games or they might be out of here. And even if I'm not sure if that's the case, they can't sit there and go, man, we'll be fine. They obviously can't have that mindset. So they've obviously, gone through this sort of calculus and figured it out. Now, the one thing I would say to what Breer talked about, because of the way Kirk Cousins is still sitting there, and the one advantage that the Browns have, in that he's not out there in the open, the Browns can specifically price how important Kirk Cousins is to him, and they know where he is.
Yeah.
It is sort of, in some ways, as much as you would like him to just be a free agent, because I think that, again, the $1.255 million is super enticing to have a quarterback room that would make basically $6 million this year, plus the dead money from Watson. Him being there in Atlanta the way he is, there's not a real threat to go get him. In some ways, he's sort of just sitting on a shelf. And the Browns can sort of evaluate all their other options. And maybe there's a world where Pittsburgh comes in and goes, no, we're going to go ahead and get him and get him out of there. That's a possibility. Do I think the Giants are going to do that? No. So that's sort of the weird benefit of that. So they're going to, if the Browns go and get Kirk Cousins, you're going to know just how important he is to them. Yeah. Which is the one thing that sort of is going to give you, I should say, it gives you a very, very clear window in.
I'm sorry. What'd you say? Finish that again.
I said the one thing that's very clear about the Kirk Cousins situation is, however they approach it, it's going to give you a very clear window into how they think.
Yeah.
Either they are willing to give up whatever it is to go get him and pay potentially the $27 million, or they don't. If they go and get him, it's going to be very clear how much they value him. And if they don't, it's also very clear how much they in that case don't value him.
Yeah, you make a good point too, because if he was on the open market, he could choose somebody else. And,
Right. And at that point,
you're really screwed.
There's this talk about, well, he could end up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And there was a world where had Mac Jones not signed with the 49ers, I thought Kyle Shanahan was going to put the full court press on him, because Kyle Shanahan has been openly in love with Kirk Cousins for basically 10 years.
Yeah.
So it sort of takes those teams out of the mix. Now, obviously, you sit there and you go, well, why would Kirk Cousins want to go be a backup? Well, it would, at that point, it would be entirely about being a great fit for him and being able to sort of wait a year, stay healthy, and then hit the open market and potentially really cash in.
Yeah. Which he's probably the best.
That is his best skill. Kirk Cousins knows how to get paid.
He certainly does. Okay. Interesting how this plays out. You agree, though, this will kind of be in this holding pattern until Rodgers makes a decision, more than likely.
Unless Russell Wilson could just decide, any day now that he's just ready to go. How much of that is a factor is unclear. The advantage Russell Wilson had. Russell Wilson's sort of in a weird dance in the sense that, on the one hand, if he's confident Rodgers is going to Minnesota, he's in great shape, because now all of a sudden he's got 3 teams vying for him.
Yeah.
However, if Aaron Rodgers comes out tomorrow and goes, "Yeah, I'm going to the Steelers," it hurts Russell Wilson. So
yeah,
I don't know that he wants to necessarily wait for it. I do think that this whole thing, and I've said this and we've reported on this whole thing, that it taking this long worked to the Browns' benefit, because they got clarity on the Kirk Cousins situations. Whatever it was going to be, they now know. In this case, the Falcons are holding on to him. They can now proceed however they want to proceed. But had sort of all these things gone super fast, it might have sort of maybe forced their hand in a way they were not ready to, not necessarily ready, but may have put them in a position they didn't necessarily want to be in.
Yeah. Okay, interesting stuff and something to monitor there. Certainly, as right now, the quarterback room is one Kenneth Pickett. Let's proceed here. You're watching the React on the OBR streaming network. Let's see here. What do we got? Okay, this is Todd McShay spewing all the things you hate about this stuff going on right now. Pete.
Well, Todd McShay is doing something that is smart that I think that I have done in the past, which is you are crafting an argument for why something would happen.
Yeah. Now,
as he's doing this, I want you to watch his co-host Steve Mench's face.
Okay. So we've got let's see here. Sure, the Browns.
Because I have watched this. Whatever you want to say about the argument he's about to make, the whole episode and the stuff he gets into on running backs is really good as well.
Yes, it is. We probably won't get to that here, but view that at your own.
No, I would just say I would recommend to somebody who's interested in the draft, by all means, go watch Todd McShay and Steve Mench talk about running backs. I think the podcast is entertaining in part because Steve Mench can just get Todd McShay pissed off.
Yes.
And at times, Todd McShay, if you watch it on YouTube, will just start doing stuff, moving around like a whirling dervish, and which is just difficult to describe.
Yeah, it is. The McShay show, courtesy of the McShay show here. This is him talking about the Browns.
Show presented by FanDuel. The NFL draft is right around the corner, and FanDuel is the best place. Are not crossed off the list from my.
Sorry, I got a timestamp here, folks. Let's get this.
Go get it, and it's real easy once you Google it. To subscribe, $4 to get you through this draft, 36 double down, gets you through this draft and next year's draft. Also, Mensch, tell the people how they can help. Support.
Really appreciate the time that people are taking to kind of invest in the show.
Wow, you're getting better at this, and I don't like it. But you mentioned the comments off of my comment about the comments, and I do have to get a chuckle because the commenters aren't totally wrong. Bill Simmons and I were texting this weekend, and he my phone's right here, right, and I'm like, and I was like, I'm going to stop down for a minute. Like I want to see some background on this, and to provide background because I know everyone's not following this as closely as we are. The Browns play-by-play broadcaster Andrew Siciliano, who you probably know, NFL Network and the former Red Zone and all those things. Great guy too. He had Myles Garrett on. Myles Garrett hinted that he knew what the quarterback situation was. I think there was a quote in there that said, I like it enough in regards to the quarterback situation. And does he know what the future is going to be? Are you comfortable with it? He said, I like it enough to be here smiling in front of you because I think we have a good chance of that happening and making the most of it. So right away, everyone started.
So he did say in the quote, if you're exactly quoting him, he does say a good chance of that happening. So there's no promise there, right? But like,
no, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing.
There's nothing. There's nothing at all.
That's the thing. Like this.
So you think Myles just lied?
I look just from an analyzing marketing angle, it's phenomenal. The Browns crushed this because they have they have Todd McShay watching it and talking about it.
You think
like
Myles
they absolutely nailed it?
Lied?
Huh?
You think Myles just lied then?
No, I think Myles Garrett's sitting there going, "I got $160 million. I love life."
Okay, but that's not what he said. He said he liked the idea of the quarterback that they told him if they can get him. And do you think that they actually told him a quarterback, or this is part of their grand marketing scheme?
I don't think they told him anything specifically because, of course, they didn't. Like, they're not going to sit here and go. They're not going to sit here and go, "We're doing that. We're doing X," because at the same point, this whole unless X is Russell Wilson.
That's what this was all about, though, Pete, wasn't it?
To me, all I saw was marketing.
No, with Myles.
What do you mean?
The whole,
his holdout?
I think he really did want to leave. This wasn't about just the money.
I'll make this very easy. He still wants to leave.
Yes, he wants out. Yes.
He still wants to leave, but that doesn't matter. He's signed. And ultimately, he's not stupid. He wants to make the best of the situation because if the Browns are successful, it's good for him. He's putting his body out there. But ultimately, as I've said all along, and I think Terry Pluto went out and agreed with me, even though I don't think he mentioned me by name. Basically, this is the best Myles could get. And then Jack Duffin analyzes the contract and finds out, wow, this contract's like even less problematic than I thought it was going to be.
Right. That's all well and good. My point is, he wanted to say, and he wanted to hear what was going on, and then he says that he does know, but you're saying that they didn't tell him anything.
Nothing. No. What I would say is, I expect they told him a general concept of what they want to do.
Okay.
But that's a wide range of things. Like they could say, "Hey, we want to sign Russell Wilson or Kirk Cousins, and then get a rookie and go." But that's not like the same thing as going, "Hey, Myles, you got to sign your contract because we are definitely taking Shooter Sanders at 2." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
Andrew Berry's not going to work that way. Like that's not what like Andrew Berry's reputation in the league, and people. There's so many people that dislike Andrew Berry, but he's really well regarded in the league. He's a straight shooter. He's very honest with people in terms of what he wants to do. So he's not going to put himself in a position where he's going to potentially be wrong. He's also not going to give somebody information that could bite him in the ass later. Because if Myles Garrett wanted to, he could go home. He could go home and tell everybody, tell his family, or it can leak ultimately what they're going to do. And Andrew Berry's not that stupid, unless Well, Jay Crawford may come in and from the side here and tell me about all the leaking that's going on in Berea, but like. It doesn't pass the smell test.
Sure.
Other than sort of giving him a general vision, that's as far as he's going to go because he's not an idiot.
Yeah, no, I'll buy that. I'll buy a general vision, and that Myles just said he knew just to say he knew. Not that it was
Yes,
scripted
like-
or anything, but
Because it also works in Myles' favor, that he gets to sort of look like he's in on it.
yeah, he looks like he's powerful. Yeah, right.
And to be fair, like I don't, I would still look at this and say Myles should, I don't know what should, but may still want to have sort of not necessarily say so much, just to sort of a line to the plan
To know what's going on.
Yeah.
What the plan is. All right.
Is it a veteran quarterback he's talking about? Is it Cam Ward trading up to number one? But then if you kind of followed along, like everyone's like, well, the only person that they're guaranteed to have at the quarterback position, where money doesn't come into a factor and will be there at number two, is Shedeur Sanders, right? So then more smoke kind of supporting that theory. Shedeur Sanders exchanges pleasantries, if you will, with the Cleveland Guardians' top prospect, Travis Bazzana, on Instagram.
I've talked about.
I don't peddle in this stuff, man.
I
really don't. Like the rumor mongering and all that stuff. But you start to look at it and you're like, maybe I should take a minute on this, right? Maybe I should look at this whole situation, and instead of being like, he doesn't have the arm, the winters are horrible in Cleveland, it's not the right place for him, does he want to go there? There also, there's been some stuff out there. He only plays with the Browns from Madden, and so there's a lot to unpack here, right? But I do think maybe some of the conspiracy theorists could be onto something here, right? For starters, it is apparent that the Cleveland's on the list of acceptable spots, right? Because if Shedeur's messing around with Bazzana, who I had to look up, by the way, I hate to admit it, but I used to be the biggest Red Sox baseball fan in the history of the world.
No idea,
right? But if he's messing around with that and has shown some interest there, and there's talks about the Browns, and he only plays them on Madden and all that stuff, like. You start to think, well, maybe that's on one of the lists of the teams that's acceptable for Coach Prime and for Shedeur and their team, right? And that's not the case for every other team, right?
No.
I talked to you about two other teams that he met with.
right?
Their responses were, it didn't seem like Shedeur cared a whole heck of a lot compared to every other prospect that's coming in here about what we thought of him, right? And so you start to think about it like, so is it, we know we'd love to go one to Tennessee. If Cleveland's on that list, I've only heard reports that the Giants could be on that list of teams that are acceptable too. And so that's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that part's important. We've been talking about this since like October. Shedeur's going to control. And by control, it's not like I'm going to pluck him on one team. It's there are some organizations my son's not going to go play for, right? And I can tell you this, I'm never going to reveal who those two people were or the organizations they work for or anything more than I revealed in the McShay report. But I will reveal this. Those two members were not from the Cleveland Browns. Okay? So they are not crossed off the list in my
You're
my
subscribed to the
standpoint, from where I
OBR,
sit
you already
today.
knew this.
We also know this. I'm just trying to go through the facts. We also know Cam Ward's expected to be the number one overall pick, whether that's Tennessee picking there or a team moving up to that number one spot. All the information I'm getting is that that's the most likely situation at the top of the draft. So maybe there's some fire to this smoke. Maybe there isn't. But either way, I want this show to constantly, and we talk about this a lot, Mensch, off the air. It's our job with the information we have and with the tape we study and with the experience that we have to advance the narrative. We can be like every other show in the world and come on and be like, you see Bazzana and Cleveland and Myles Garrett, and we could do that rumor stuff and like put rumors on top of rumors. But that's why I stopped down for a few hours. And I started to do two things. I made a conscious decision to come sit up here in my office and do some research on Kevin Stefanski, who he's worked with in the past, putting myself in Andrew Berry, the general manager for the Cleveland Browns, shoes, and trying to figure out what are his options? Where is he with the salary cap? Where is he in terms of what his options are at that quarterback position. Where is this roster now, which is pretty good?
Mm-hmm.
What's missing? Quarterback. And then also make a couple calls to people who have been or are in that seat as a general manager in the NFL, so that I can take myself out of that global thinking for a minute of, well, he doesn't have the arm strength and he's not a top 3 prospect. He could be falling. I talked to a couple people from different organizations that think he doesn't want to go there. And talking to them about, okay, if you're in charge of the Browns, given their circumstances and how handcuffed they are, they're more handcuffed than any other organization by one contract, Deshaun Watson, right? Okay.
Yep.
So I did all those things. For Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski specifically, you believe in what you're doing, right? You've built a good roster. You believe in yourself as a coach and the history you've had and the winning you've done. You also know that you need to win at some point real soon to save your job. Drafting at number 2, having the season they had, stacking those consecutively is not going to cut it. But you need to be able to, so like you believe in what you're doing and you know if we have time and a few years to build this thing and we get the quarterback and we can insert it. We got Myles Garrett now locked down. We brought in Jerry Jeudy. We got Denzel at cornerback, Denzel Ward. Like we've got pieces that are hard to get in this league, but we need a minute. We need a minute. Give us a little bit of time. The problem is if we're picking here at 2 again and have a chance to draft one of those top quarterbacks, it's probably going to be somebody else making those decisions and probably going to be somebody else coaching those players, right? So how do you solve the crisis? They have a crisis at the quarterback position. And whether it was ownership forced it upon them, however it worked out, they're stuck with this situation. Deshaun Watson was the worst contract given to an individual, maybe in the history of sports. Right?
Yeah, it's not hyperbole. I think that's
it truly isn't. So how do we manage with the handcuffs off? What's our best path, right? They know they've got a roster good enough to win a lot of games in 2025 and probably for the next 2 seasons because of those guys I told you. They just need solid quarterback play. They don't need elite quarterback play. They don't. They need solid quarterback play. They did not get that from Deshaun Watson. That's what happened last year. They also know that they won't have the money. They don't have the money to sign a top-tier guy. They weren't in on Stafford. This is not a pluck, pay, and play situation for them. And that's not changing in 2026. So as I'm putting myself in Andrew Berry's shoes, I'm saying, what, like, organizationally, what's our way out of purgatory? They're in purgatory because of Deshaun Watson. It's only to draft and get a quarterback on a rookie contract. It truly is. These 2 things are true, okay? Hear me. And Berry has to be thinking these things. 1, they can't expect to be drafting this high again for a while. They're too good. That roster's too good. Okay?
Too good.
And if they are, as I said, Berry and Stefanski are very likely out of jobs.
Win one game.
Number 2, because of the Watson deal, you don't have the cap space to make it a big ticket signing, as I just said. So it ain't next year in the draft for a quarterback, or else you're out of a job probably. And it's not going to be this year or next year signing a big name guy who can come in and solve it all. So I'm saying all this to reiterate Cleveland's best chance at winning short and long term is to strike gold with this number 2 pick. So let's start asking the questions. Let's dig in. Is Shador an elite prospect?
No.
Would Shador have been a top 4 or 5 quarterback taken last year?
No.
But if I'm Berry, here's how I see it. And this is the difference when I say globally versus each situation and organization individually. If I'm Andrew Berry, and this is the most important thing I'm going to say all day, my greatest asset in this whole mess is my head coach. Stefanski is my greatest asset. Why?
Okay.
Because Stefanski has a proven track record of getting the most out of pocket passing quarterbacks with limited mobility.
Okay.
Sound familiar?
Yeah. Listen.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Shador's skill set is
Are you looking at
strikingly
his
similar
face?
to a handful of
Does this look
quarterbacks.
like a man who's
Stefanski's
convinced?
had won a lot of games.
I mean, what do you think? Okay, so not all of his case, but some of those things are things that I've said to you before, right? It just, in the
Right.
general consensus of conversation, we've discussed this before. If they don't win enough games, it's like a cyclical thing, right?
Right.
If you don't win enough games, you don't get a chance to come back and get your guy. So how do you bridge this appropriately so that you can win enough games to come back and get your guy? And then when you come back, how do you make sure you get the guy you really like? If you're at 2, and in my case, I guess I'm not advocating for taking Shador anymore. I'm advocating for them going all in to try to get Ward.
Let me ask you something. In that diatribe that he built up to try to sell this case, what was the most positive thing he said about Shador Sanders?
Accurate pocket passer.
Yeah, he laid out. He noted concerns about arm in Cleveland and the AFC board.
I will say though that Sims just went on and did his thing and said that he thinks he has a plus arm.
Yeah, I found that very strange. He's also down on Dart's arm comparatively. He thinks Dart has a weaker arm than Sanders does, which I find not. I disagree with that. But like McShay is telling you all the reasons why the Browns would take Sanders, and he basically says nothing positive about the quarterback.
Sure.
Which makes it sort of fall apart for me immediately. He's not selling the quarterback. He's selling the idea. And, I say this, like, I understand what he's doing. He is setting up the argument for why this would happen. I would argue that if Kevin Stefanski, as he said, if I agree with him that Kevin Stefanski is my best asset, I don't want to saddle him with a quarterback that is okay. I want to get him a good quarterback, a quarterback I believe in, and I'm willing to find a way to get there where I don't have to use the second pick in the draft to get there. If that's trading up from 33, if that's veterans, if that's both, fine. But I ultimately want to get to a point where I'm taking the guy he really, really wants. Because if he's that good, I want to give Picasso his paintbrush. I don't want to go, hey, he's my best asset. Here's the best I could find. It's not very good, but here you go, second pick. Like, that's where I have a really difficult time with this. And that's, it puts me in this position where I'm sort of like, oh, I hate Shador Sanders. I don't. But
you can't just take the guy because he's a quarterback. And I agree with
you. You have to be able to, you have to look at through some value, through some lens that incorporates the value of the player. Because if you come out of this and all these people will tell me, well, it doesn't matter. It's the quarterback position until it doesn't work. And then you are a giant moron for taking the 24th prospect over the number 1 or number 2 prospect. It was sitting right there. And you'll get this argument where, don't overcomplicate it. Don't twist yourself into knots about this decision. Just take the quarterback. I'm making it as easy as possible. I'm stacking my board and I'm saying I'm taking the guy up here. The Browns have been out of the top of the draft for 3 freaking years. And now they're there. They're at the top of the draft. And the first thing all these people want to do is immediately scroll down to where we were working when we didn't have any picks. You are here at this one. You have this opportunity to take the first or second best player in the draft. And you're sitting there going, man, I want to work back down here where I had to when we didn't have any picks because we made this incredibly stupid decision for Deshaun Watson. That is insane. You are now saying for the 4th draft in a row, we are not going to get a first-round caliber player, and in this case, potentially the best player in the entire draft. It does not work. You just don't do it. So you're going to figure it out after that. You're going to live with the consequences. If Shador goes 3 and Jackson Dart goes 21, figure it out. Here's my thing. I really like Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, and I'm rooting them for them to succeed. However, I didn't trade for Deshaun Watson, and I don't give a damn if they get fired because they did. They made the mess. Don't then sell out another draft because you screwed up the Deshaun Watson trade, and now I gotta lose another great draft pick because of your mistake. Figure it out. And if I was the owner of the team, I would tell them the same thing. And here's the thing: I'm very confident that they're not going to do that. But having said that, if I'm in the room, I'm saying, listen, not my problem. I had no interest in making this stupid decision and trading 1,700 draft picks and giving him $43 billion for a guy who had every reason to suck.
He just said his greatest asset was Stefanski, though.
You do not get to throw away second pick because you screwed up.
He just said his greatest asset was his head coach, though. So it does matter.
I agree.
So you can't just be like, I don't care.
I'm also of the opinion that I would extend Kevin Stefanski for 10 years tomorrow.
Right.
I can't put myself in their shoes, but you cannot come into the organization and tell me, yeah, we're just going to basically throw away second pick on a bad game.
I get it.
You just can't do that. And that's an insane position to take.
All right. Let me take it a slightly different position then, just for the purpose of the show. Cam Ward. 2/3, a third and a second. I'm doing it. You're there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
you're right there. You're one pick away. If you love him, go get him.
But you're not. But here's the thing. You're not one pick away, though. You're a second and third round pick away, as you've laid it out.
Okay. But you know what I mean? I mean, but either. Okay. So that's what I mean, though. That's all it will cost you this year to get the best quarterback in what many consider an elite quarterback prospect. Okay. So if you love him, then you should spend what you takes to get one pickup rather than wait until next year and have to spend what it costs to move up 30 picks to get the guy that you want.
Granted, however, I would have gotten the best player in the draft and then done it. That's the caveat.
Okay. But
so to your point, because somebody had the same argument with me today.
There's no guarantee
basically
that
saying,
you're
look, you're gonna have to give up these draft assets to eventually get your guy. You're either gonna do it now, or you're gonna wait a year and do the same thing. Ultimately, you're going to expend some significant amount of resources to do what you're talking about. However, in my scenario, I get Abdul Carter, the best player in the draft, and get that quarterback. Now, the difference
you get
here
what quarterback
is very clear.
though?
The difference here is very clear. You know exactly who you're getting.
Yes.
It's there. That is obviously the huge advantage of your argument. If you love Cam Ward, it's right there. Obviously, in my scenario, there's a mystery box element to it. But I did get Abdul Carter, and I'm really happy about having Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett on my football team. So
agreed.
I get it. To me, I need the other draft picks very much at this point. I desperately need those picks.
But you're going to be giving up a bunch to get the guy you really want next year.
Granted, but I need those players now because I need to win football games. To your point, though, I get it. Like if I would be annoyed straight up. I would be very salty if I wake up tomorrow and find out that the 33rd and 67th pick are gone, or 33rd and 94th pick are gone, but the Browns are getting Cam Ward. I understand why they would do it, but I would be salty as hell.
Yeah, but we said a third this year and a third next year. We didn't say 30.
You said I would give up a second and a third.
Yeah, not in the same year.
Okay, well, 33 and next year.
Not giving up my whole draft this year.
Rest assured, I'd be salty as hell. But look, again, I'd at least understand. I understand that a hell of a lot more. I understand what you're advocating way more than I do either. And again, I include Jackson Dart in this. It's not just Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
I would sign on if gun to my head, I have to choose between your plan and taking either Shedeur or Dart at 2. I'm going with the trade and taking Ward.
Okay, so I want to get to this just because I got people in the chat telling me that Ward isn't elite.
Depends who you talk to. There are
And it
some people who
depends on
love
who you
him.
talk to.
Some people do not. Some people think he's QB2 in this class. I think he's
Okay.
QB1 by a hefty distance. My only concern is hands. The hands are not very big. And that, yes, it technically crosses the 9-inch threshold at 9 inches.
Bigger than Kenny's.
But it does not make me feel great. He does have a track record for fumbles. But other than that, like this other stuff I look at and people don't like, decision making, some of that stuff, we would have said the same thing about Patrick Mahomes coming out, and I had him QB1 as well. And I'm not suggesting Cam Ward is Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying that was the big knock on Patrick Mahomes coming out. There were other things that Patrick Mahomes also had to do, but like coming at Texas Tech, he would just throw the ball anywhere. And Cam Ward has that throw the ball just anywhere. So did Josh Allen. Josh Allen had the same thing. Obviously, Josh Allen's journey is a significantly longer one. Played JUCO and at Wyoming, and the Bills basically took him and rebuilt him. So there's obviously differences there. But just in terms of, do I think decision-making can be fixed? Yes. Or I even if it's not fixed, I think you can improve it and get better overall results. And I've said all along, I think Kevin Stefanski, and I said this before it became like sort of a given for the most part. The consensus opinion was that Cam Ward is QB1. When people thought it was a lot closer, I've consistently said I thought Cam Ward would have been Kevin Stefanski's taste. I think he's way more interested in taking tools and shaping a coachable kid than he is taking sort of Johnny average and getting the most out of them. And the Deshaun Watson trade illustrates that to me. I still think they're going to want a toolsier guy ultimately. And that's the other thing. Part of the reason I, again, don't think they're taking Shedeur at 2. I think they want way more in terms of those obvious traits.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, and this is where I think it sets itself off, we'll see. We shall see. If Shedeur goes 3 or 6, it won't matter. But if Shedeur is floating there in the middle of the first round and the Browns go up and get him, people will play Shedeur's music over Journey. That will be what happens over Journey. Journey will have to play Shedeur's single at Cleveland Browns. That is what will happen, because people will be, all these people who berated me about and insisted the Browns had to take him at 2 will all be celebrating it's the greatest thing ever. It will, again, just like 2007 with Brady Quinn. Even though Brady Quinn didn't work out, great process. I think that is a far more plausible scenario and one that you can see happening than just taking Shedeur at 2.
Real quickly, just wanted to try to get to, the chat is down on Cam Ward, I guess. I like Chris Sims. I think his evaluations are, for the most part, very accurate. I think that one thing he does well is not get into the group think stuff that we have a lot of, where like one person says one thing. That's just something that you're very good at too, Pete, that, you don't follow the group think. You express your opinion based on what you see, what you hear. They're well thought out opinions. I think Chris does the same thing, and he does the work. He watches a ton of tape, and he's been right over the years. He's right about Mahomes. He's right about Josh Allen. Anyways, I wanted to just throw up his he did his list here, his thoughts on Cam Ward, because kind of was surprising how high he was on him.
Draft quarterback rankings. We are starting with tier 1, quarterback number 1. You may have already somewhat given it away.
Yeah, I think I have. I mean, I've said it on here too. I know you weren't here last week, and I've been telling everybody, listen, there's no secret this year. This is no secret.
But pretend there is a secret.
Well, here's the secret.
Your number 1 quarterback is?
My number 1 quarterback is the same guy that's number 1 on all 32 teams' boards, and that will be Cam Ward from Miami.
There
right? That's where this year is. I would be shocked right off the bat if any team didn't have Cam Ward number 1. Right? Other years I go, okay, yeah, it's debatable. I get it. That team likes that team. I don't agree with that, but sure. All right, great. Right? But this is not one of those years. I think this is a slam dunk. And I think when you talk about Cam Ward right off, and I have to make just the banner statement, right? It's just like, wow, a lot of high-level, wow, accurate throws. That would be the thing I would say. Makes a lot of great off-platform throws or awkward feet throws, right? The feet are all cockeyed, but still, oh, wait, this guy, I thought he was going to be open. I set up the throw. Somebody flashed in front of my face. Now I got to throw it over there. So what? My feet are cockeyed. I can still find a way to get that done there. That's incredible. The off-platform throws, right? The ability to throw on the run is elite. He's always calm and cool. When he really wants to throw a rocket, he can find another gear in his arm that nobody in this draft class has, okay? He has an elite arm, an elite release, an elite variety of throws, elite feet and feel in the pocket. He's elite with RPOs, quick game, and screens. He's as good as you're going to see in that department. This kind of stuff, right? Fake it. Woo, get it out quick. Oh, there's a screen out on the edge. Gets the snap. Boom, throws it out there like that. Like, it's like, damn, how did he even grab it and throw it that quickly, right? Those are important things this day and age in the NFL. As good as you're going to see. Decision-making. Better than I thought, okay? We're going to dive into this a little deeper. But just a base level, better than I thought. And then 39 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. You're not making too many bad decisions with that stat line. There's some things I know stats don't say it all, and context matter. But for a gunslinger, decisions can't be that bad when it's 39-7, okay? And, like, the offense has to carry the team on an every day, every week basis because we know that Miami defense wasn't very good last year. Fading away from pressure, right? You saw him do that. People kind of bearing down on him and him just like, oh, I'm just going to go backwards and then flick a ball 30 yards and drop it over a linebacker and a safety. It's as good as you'll see in that department. There's not. That's a gift that he has that only the special ones have. So he sees the field awesome. I love the kid. I'd take him number one. He's the number one quarterback in the draft. He's the man. He's a franchise quarterback. And I think that's a big reason you haven't heard the Titans involved in any conversation with any veteran quarterback or anything, because I think they probably saw what I saw. They turned it on. They saw all the other quarterbacks, and they went, oh, damn, this guy's freaking good. We're going to take him at number one. And that's the end of that story.
So you think the Titans are going to take Cam Ward?
I think so. I think he's too good to pass up. I wouldn't pass him up. And you know what's on top of that? You want to read the name I put on top of this? And I'm not going to take total credit here, right? I don't always write people he reminds me of.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of this just because of the way he's so strong in the pocket. But what's that name right there? Can you read that name?
Steve McNair.
Exactly. Where did he play?
Tennessee Titans.
Exactly right. There's a little of that. And I'll give my dad credit there. My dad was the one who was kind of, you've got, some McNair in him. And he does with the way he can hang in the pocket, break arm tackles, make people miss. His throwing motion's a little different, but he's still a big, strong guy who can make power throws down the football field, who looks to throw in the pocket, but when nothing's there, can get outside the pocket and make something happen, which we talk about as such a valuable thing right now in the NFL.
6'2", 220.
Yep.
He turns 23 in May, so on the older side, but I think we've gone past that.
We've gotten that,
as a
right?
culture.
Right.
Yeah, with Bo Nix and Michael Penix
Right.
and what they've done
Age
last year.
still
In his
matters.
senior year in high school, he played in the wing T offense. Same offense as Ahmed
I
Fareed.
know. Well, damn, he
12
knew that's where
pass
greatness
attempts.
was born.
Yeah, exactly. Was at Washington State and then goes over to Miami and really turns it around. Like you mentioned, 39.
All right. Anyways, so everybody in the chat still hating on Ward.
Good.
I
And
don't.
we all agree. Abdul Carter, put it in.
Yeah, I mean,
Done.
I don't know what there is to hate on him that much, though. I mean, you're saying all compared to this class. He didn't compare him to this class. If he does, if you listen on, if we had the time to go on with that, he says he's in a tier by himself. It's not about this class. He's comparing him to previous other prospects who are now stars in the league.
Yeah, he a lot of people have sort of hedged on this. Jordan Reed has not. Jordan Reed planted his flag and said he's firmly QB3 or 4 compared to last year with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. I think he put him right behind Drake May in that, but he's firmly planted his flag. Chris Sims is pretty firm in his belief that Cam Ward is not elite for this class. He's just that good.
Yeah.
Look, the decision making at times you can sit there and go, this is downright preposterous. Some of the stuff in Cal, I genuinely think there are times where he is bored or just does stuff to see if he can do it. But and that's not good. You certainly don't want that,
No.
and it would drive you insane. But I don't think that's going to happen in the NFL as much. There will still be, at some point, he will still make an interception that you will watch you jump out on the field and tackle him. It will still happen.
Doesn't. Yeah, I mean,
but in general, just ability. The thing that Chris Sims said, the arm is great. Again, he said the same thing I do. His feet are incredible. He is so good at getting where his feet need to be to make throws. He sees the field really well. Listen, you watch the tape over and over again. He scares a defense. He has a you get all these sort of buzzwords on. He does have a presence on the field about him in the way that it feels like he is sort of toying with his food. And yes, some of that is because he didn't play anybody. The ACC is not a good conference. It did not have much in terms of defense. And he carved it up, and it was never really a contest. And then he goes against, they go in the bowl game, and people are critical of the bowl game thing where he played half, which I'm perfectly fine with and have no issues with. He played against Iowa State, who has not played defense all year and just destroyed them.
Yeah.
So that is a valid criticism. The hand thing, I continue to have a concern with. I sit there and go, AFC North, but ability wise, I think he has game changing ability. Can he fail? Sure. Is there a world where I can see him just being an absolute beast of a passer that scares defenses? You watch some of the throws he can make and how fast they go from his hand to the receiver and how the DB has no chance. There are times where you watch him go against zone defenses and he's just picking them apart. They cannot do anything.
It's effortless.
The way he can sort of extend plays and throw guys to areas where he could make them happen. Just outstanding. And granted, there are players on that team that teams are, Restrepo and Elijah Arroyo. But the bottom line is most people had no idea who Xavier Restrepo or Elijah Arroyo were until basically like the Senior Bowl. Up until that point, it was Cam Ward is just cooking people. He leaves a huge impression with just how good he can be. And again, it's not difficult for me to understand why I think the Browns would be happy to select him and why ultimately I think the Titans will select him and why the Giants have already trade up and get him. One, that is a commentary on how good they think Cam Ward is. And two, it's also a commentary on what they think of everybody else.
Ultimately, I don't think they will trade up and get him. I just and I'm not even saying that's the right move, but I would be considering it if they like him. If they don't love him, that's fine. Charlie Chuck in the chat, who I respect very much his opinion, just watched the tape today where his feet were off target and he threw incomplete passes. Okay, I don't. That's fine. That's your evaluation. I'm sure that you can find, any quarterback's film where their feet were out of place and threw incomplete. He's not a complete quarterback yet, but he has a high ceiling and he has the tools to get there. And that's what's intriguing about him. So for me.
Yeah, he's athletic enough. In the world we exist in, he is athletic enough. And the Steve McNair thing is really interesting. I still see when you watch him move around, he still looks eerily like Deshaun Watson, and then he throws like Bernie Kosar or Phillip Rivers. But he's just extraordinarily gifted. His path to the NFL is similar to Baker Mayfield's in terms of going from Incarnate Word to Washington State, and then finally to Miami. There's a lot to like about the kid. Everybody raves about him. If you listen to Todd McShay talk about him, Todd McShay is ready to practically bone him in terms of just go, he's a dog. He's a dog. That is and Todd McShay is not alone on that. That is how a lot of people perceive him. He just gets it. You watch him just giving Shedeur Sanders crap in those workout videos. Now, I couldn't help but look at his hands. They still look very small in those videos, but he just carries himself in a way where you sort of get it.
Chat, very much in your corner here still. Everybody laughing at this. Abdul Carter too. Okay, so you guys don't care about the quarterback, I guess. You guys don't care about quarterback. You're a Browns fan. That's hard for me to understand. But I get you want Abdul Carter. He's the best player in the draft, to Pete's point. I get that. However, you're right there. You should consider it.
I think if it was going to happen,
answered the quarterback question in 40 years, people. You have not answered it in 40 years, but yet you're ready to just dismiss it again. Your answer is to get more running backs and play better defense. I'm sorry. That's not going to win you anything significant until you have a star quarterback. What the Eagles did this year, yes, it worked, but it is not. It is an anomaly, Pete. It is not this. That is the exception, not the rule.
Well, I would say, to your point, it's the fact they play in the NFC. They got to play one AFC elite quarterback. They did not have to go through a playoff bracket where they theoretically had to go through Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes all in the same run. That is a foreseeable outcome for somebody to have to get through in the AFC. And that's what makes it so difficult. Now, having said that, makes it a lot easier if you have Abdul Carter, Myles Garrett, Isaiah McGuire, Malik Collins, and Mike Hall coming after the quarterback. But to your point, you're right. You're absolutely right. Now, having said all of that, I think that if the Browns were going to trade for the first pick in the draft, it would have already happened.
Like I said, I don't think they're going to do it.
The Giants are the team where I think the options are open. The Giants are the team I think are desperate enough to give you everything.
That's messed up, world's fastest, to say that, man. That's messed up, man, to throw me in there with UCSS just because I'm saying to trade up to 1. Come on. That's crazy talk. That is wild.
It's not listen, it's again, if you're asking me, would I rather pay the price to move up to 1? If it's a second round pick and next year's third, for example, or this year's third and next year's second or something like that, I would still do that rather than take Ward or then take Sanders or Dart at 2. I'm 100% with him on that. Where I'm not is I am more than happy. Again, and I could go on all day.
And so am I. I'm completely happy with taking Carter.
Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter is what you want in a defensive football player. What he is the speed, the pursuit, the effort. He has all the things you desperately desire to have in Cleveland Browns football players. Now, even as I say that, and I get to have a killbot defense, it doesn't solve the quarterback issue, which you're right. But unless you get Cam Ward, I think you are operating in a world where you are getting essentially developmental guys.
Yeah.
Shedeur, I think the difference between Shedeur and everybody else, Shedeur is a quicker path to the field. But I think some of everybody else's have a higher ceiling that I think the Browns are going to be potentially more interested in if it gets that far. But again, if Shedeur is sitting there in the 20s, potentially at 20th pick, I would not be shocked if suddenly, there's been a trade. It's either the Giants or the Browns go up and get him because he is good enough to do that. So like this idea that I hate Shedeur Sanders, I hate him. But I'm perfectly happy to go trade up and get him. I just don't think he's worth the second pick of the draft. I think there are 3 players in the conversation for second pick of the draft. And I wrote today why I wouldn't take one of them.
Yeah. And I'm with you on that. I totally agree. I've been saying that for a long time about the novelty aspect of it. But I just want, if I was going to take him, I would just use him as a receiver.
Yeah, 100%. Look, and I wrote in the article, I agree with Andrew Berry's assessment 100%. He is really good in terms of ball skills and the ball and getting the ball in his hands. Yeah. And it's not wrong obviously it gets overplayed at points, but it's not wrong to say a lot of defensive backs are playing DB because they can't catch. He can. So get him the ball and potentially allow him to do it 100 times. That is way more appealing to me than playing defense. Now, I make the argument in the article that he needs to play one side of the ball, at least for the time being.
At least for the first year or two. Yeah.
But nevertheless, look, when it comes down to it, in terms of how I operate, evidence evidence in addition to the traits and all these other things, I like evidence. Abdul Carter has the best case to make of any player in this draft to be the best player in this draft, bar none. From production to metrics to athleticism to age to just watching him on the field to impact. There are a lot of people who liked Drew Lar, and if had he declared, I don't think Shedeur Sanders would be in the conversation. I know there are people who want to disagree with me. I think at this point, if Drew Lar was in this class, that would be the conversation in Cleveland and New York. Are we taking Drew Lar? Having said that, there are people who absolutely adore Tyler Warren, absolutely adore Drew Aller. There is no debate who the best player on that team was, and it wasn't close. It's this kid, and he's younger. He's got all the skills you could possibly want, and if you have him across from Myles Garrett, who's already the best edge rusher in football, you have to find a way to block both of them. And you have Isaiah McGuire, and you have Mike Hall coming into his second. You have Malik Collins, who I think is a tremendous signing for this team in terms of fit and what he brings to the table. So, in terms of following sort of an Eagle-style blueprint, that's it.
Yep. I think they will take Carter. And I have no problem with that. That's fine. Their defense will be amazing. I just wonder if you could tell me how they were going to get their quarterback next year, I would feel great about it.
Yeah. I mean, and look, the mystery box is appealing, but it ultimately requires a plan. And that's the problem. And obviously that's where a lot of people get into this idea. And I don't think it's realistic of trade back, get more assets for next year. I don't think anybody's coming up or coming up with enough that is going to make it worth your while not to take Carter. But
yeah, they're not.
So then you get into, is it trading up and getting a Sanders or a Dart? Is it Jalen Milroe? Is it Will Howard? Is it whoever, whichever quarterback in this class you like? I mean, the one thing that this quarterback class does have, and every analyst I've seen has talked about that, there is a genuine mid-round quarterback class here. Whereas like last year was the ultimate extreme. You went from 12th pick to 150th pick between quarterback selections. This one has a real middle ground where you could potentially get a guy who's ultimately going to be able to start for you in the second or third or fourth round. Now, is that a franchise answer? Probably not, but you have to price that in. What are you giving up to get that franchise answer? And to me, this is where people will think I hate Shedeur Sanders. I don't see a path to a top 10 to 12 quarterback. I just don't. I think he can be a good quarterback. Good is not good enough at 2. Good is great at 33 or in the 20s.
Yeah. Is Jameis Winston still I know he visited with the Giants. Pat Shea is bringing up Winston again. I kind of feel like that relationship, I don't know. I can't imagine them going back there again, but is that still on the table, Pete, you think?
Last I heard that it's in a life preserver. Not entirely out of the question, but it's not, and that's not to say that it can't happen. I just think that the way the Browns have viewed their option, that's sort of, we're getting close to being done on that front. But having said that, if Russell Wilson signs, with New York tomorrow, suddenly they may be pulling him back in a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah. Does it sound crazy to say that I would rather have Flacco than Winston?
No, only because I I would still take Winston between the two, but the difference is Flacco as a stabilizing professional.
Yes.
All the positive things he brings to the table for us, whereas Jameis Winston can be a super positive. His impact on Jerry Jeudy is unquestionable. He was a huge benefit. But he's also a little bit of a roller coaster. Now, I would argue him being a roller coaster is in part because of the way they coddled Deshaun Watson. And I think there's some justified distaste there. But I also think Jameis Winston's just history is a little bit of a roller coaster. He's a little bit highs and lows. The highs are great. The lows are not.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like this locker room is in need of a professional.
Yeah, and that's where, one, Joe Flacco is a positive. And also, whatever you think of him, corny, whatever, Russell Wilson, goofy as he is, keeps the main thing, as the kids say. Like, he is a guy who's a professional football quarterback. He got too big for his britches in Seattle, yes. But, even on Hard Knocks, like Mike Tomlin just always, like, him and Russell Wilson always, like, looked like they were about to start making out over football cliches. They were so in love with the sport, which is, that's what you want from your quarterback. Like, again, Russell Wilson is cheesy, 1,000%. But you know how important it is to him. And there is to use your word, safe. There's safety in that.
Yeah. Fumble. I love you, man.
1985.
It ain't 1985 anymore, brother.
Yeah, let's go.
Changed.
Listen,
the game.
Hey, we got Mike Bloomgren in the house. Let's stand for this thing up.
Yep. Listen, I appreciate everybody's opinion and all your contributions to the show. You guys are fantastic. The always amazing Michael Keefe and Company on Garage Beers is up next. Keep it locked at the OBR. Any parting words tonight, Pete?
Yes. Obviously subscribe to the OBR. For those who are in there, they know what's going on, and you're hearing a lot of national reporters and some local reporters tell you stuff we've already told you. Beyond that, just help us out. Tell a friend. Subscribe on YouTube, the podcast if you prefer that delivery method. But yeah, just keep hammering away on the website. Keep coming to the forums, asking us questions, all that stuff. Plenty going on, and we'll continue to go on even as we slowly navigate this free agency period.
I don't know. I don't know if I can forgive you for that one. World's fastest. All right, I'm just kidding. I appreciate you all. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way out. The always fantastic Pete Smith, killing it again tonight. As I see people in the chat saying all the time, Pete's cooking tonight, as the kids would say.
We'll see if I pre-bought a jersey, since that's the thing this has been the thing this year.
Did you see that idiot?
Are so starved. Browns fans are so starved to have a top pick that the number of people that either DM'd me an Abdul Carter jersey or local radio personalities have bought a Sanders jersey. And I say this with all due respect. Like, I love it. That part I love. Like, you're going to be wrong about the Sanders one, but unless they trade back up and get him. But I love the passion. That part is fun. I will never take that away from anybody. The amount of people who are willing to commit to the bit, as it were, with a Sanders jersey or Abdul Carter's jersey is awesome. I hope the Abdul Carter ones are right. And who knows, maybe they'll both be right at the end of the day, but that part is awesome. I miss that aspect of it. When you don't have a first round pick for 3 years, you miss that stuff.
Yep. All right. You guys are great. Great job, Pete. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. This has been another edition of The React. Keep it locked at theobr.com. Have a wonderful evening and enjoy Garage Beers next. We are out.